Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. We begin with the name of Allah, whose mercy is felt by all in this life, and whose mercy is expressed in a profound or special way for those who have faith in the life to come. The subject that I want to talk about very quickly is entitled The Role of Men in the Divine System. And it largely centers around a text of the Qur'an, chapter 4, verse 34. It is a text which I was reading this morning, as a matter of fact, in my daily Qur'an reading during the month of Ramadan. And reading it afresh, reading the context, there were a couple of things that I realized that I wanted to share. And hopefully it will at least generate thought. That will generate discussion. And God willing, we will find benefit from it. Now, the latter part of the text, which has actions that are to be done when there is a case of what in Arabic is called nushuz, or from the wife, I'm actually not going to go into that at this time. I will say very briefly that in terms of actually hitting a woman, as a literal reading of the text would seem to imply, that we are told in the hadith literature that the Prophet Muhammad himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, never used to hit a woman. So we should understand that the Prophet is the best explainer of the Quran, that he exemplified or he lived the Quran, he demonstrated the Quran. So the meaning has nothing to do with spousal abuse. However, let's look at the text very quickly. Chapter 4, verse 34, it says, men are to be consistent in their support of women, in that God has given consistently one above the other, and that they spend of their wealth. Thus, righteous, obedient women of dedication, they are to guard in that which is hidden, al-ghaib, in that which is hidden, what Allah would have them guard. Now, what this is telling us, just looking at the first part of the text, is that just as in any company, an organization, in a nation, in any structure, there is a little bit of hierarchy involved, and there is a little bit of rules that are involved. And so in the divine order, God has placed males to function in that way. Now, that doesn't mean that males are necessarily superior to females. It doesn't mean it has to be a recipe for domestic violence, or it has to be a recipe for toxic masculinity, or any of those types of things. But it is stating there is a order of things that exist within nature, and that this order is to be respected. To be respected. Now, very quickly, let's look at the next text. The next text, which is chapter 4, verse number 34, it says that when there is a problem between a man and a wife, the step that it says there is that a arbiter, hakaman, an arbiter, is appointed from his family and from her family. Now, what this does is, first of all, it preserves the dignity of the marriage relationship. It doesn't allow for everyone's dirty laundry to be aired for the whole world to see. But look at the text which follows, which is verse number 36, chapter 4, verse number 36. I'll just read it very quickly in English. After it tells us the structure of the society, after it tells us what to do when there is great problem between the husband and wife, it says this. It says, and worship God. Do not commit shirk with him in any way. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, in any way. Display ihsan or goodness to parents. Who else? To parents, to near relations, to those who are isolated, al-yatama, those who are isolated, usually translated as orphans, to those cut off from earning money on their own, wal masakin, to display goodness towards close neighbors, to far neighbors, to the friend at your side, to the stranded traveler, ibn sabil, stranded traveler, literally the son of the road. That's what it literally says in Arabic. And those that you have responsibility for, وَمَنْ مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, and those you have dominion or you have responsibility for. Indeed, Allah does not like the arrogant, He does not like the proud. So the point that we're looking at is that the responsibility of men goes from the family down. So, and this is the hierarchy that Allah has placed. So immediately after saying what the man function is to be, immediately after saying how to solve the marital problems, immediately after saying that, He gives us in chapter 4, verse number 36, He gives us in this text a very long display of who it is that we should be benefit towards. And basically, if you look at it holistically, it's talking about the entire society. It's talking about the entire society. But it stems from the family first. Family first, then the rest of the society second. In those areas that are applicable to us. So we all have neighbors, we all have friends, we all have relatives who are close, we all have relatives who are not so close. Allah has placed us in these realms to function within these realms in a decent and good way. Now, what is interesting is the next 2 or 3 verses. So verse 37 and verse 38. And I'm actually not quoting these verses in whole because I would like you to read the text for yourself. Now, verses number 37 and 38 speak of those who ignore these things. And not only do they ignore them, but they preach or they advocate to people stinginess, selfishness. They advocate, teach others that there should be no distribution of wealth in the society, that wealth should be just kept hidden somewhere, that no investment should take place, that no responsibility for in the wider society should take place. And those who preach these things often do so with their own selfish, but not just selfish, outright evil agendas in mind. And there is a wealth of literature about this point. And perhaps in the future, inshallah, we will look at some of that literature. Now, verse 40 of this chapter, chapter 4, An-Nisa, called Women, An-Nisa, it shows that spending always has its rewards. And elsewhere in the Qur'an, it says, Hal jaza'ul ihsan illa al-ihsan. What reward is there for goodness or benefit except goodness? Now, those who have advocated to the world selfishness, narcissism, no responsibility in the world, no responsibility in society, those who have advocated that, especially when they themselves are from powerful points, powerful positions, verses 40 and 41, 41 and 42 tell us that on the day of judgment, that they are going to have to face God for that lack of responsibility. So we are stewards in this life. This is what the Quran is telling us, is that as men in particular, we are stewards. This is something that we cannot, that we should not, and we cannot ignore. no matter what position we are in within life, that we cannot ignore our responsibilities. So I pray that these words have been found useful, and that much discussion is generated from these words. May Allah accept your fasting, your prayers, and all good actions. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.